There is a member of this community, a partner of our congregation, who is the second cousin to Mr. Alton, who was killed in Baton Rouge. I called this young man on yesterday to provide pastoral care support. He said to me that it's one thing when you hear about it happening to other people, but it's something totally different when it happens on your porch, in your living room, in your family. See, this is one of the things I think the African American and Latino community, I think that's one thing we're going to share. Like when we see this, we think about this could be our son, it could be our brother, it could be our uncle, it could be, this is what we're thinking about. And if you're not African American, you don't see it that way. Really, it's sad, but it's different. And what this young man was trying to say to me, he said, it's radically different when it happens to you. And he said to me, he said, Pastor, he said, I've been torn up for days. And his wife was in New York on business, and she was trying to help him. So she went to the archives. I guess a couple of months ago, I preached a sermon entitled "I Don't Get It." And in that sermon, I said, I asked, what do you do when you wake up in the dark? And the answer was, light a candle. And so she sent that to him, and he said, Pastor, that helped me out. But I just got to ask you a question. You were in Roxbury, and all this shooting, this killing, you've been knowing this for about 30 years. He said, kind of like, does it make you angry? I said, yes. And then he went on and said, but how do you, and here's what he really wanted to say. He found a diplomat and said, but he didn't say here's what he was thinking. He was thinking, how do you see this happen again and again and again? And somehow you don't hate white people. Well, that was the question he really wanted to answer. So he essentially said, how do you deal with it? I said, well, I have a good memory. I said, no, I have a good memory. I said, I remember all of the times when I see this happen, white on black crime, when I see this happen, I remember all of the time when God raised up white people to do good things in my life that helped me to become who I am. I have a good memory. I remember Miss Gahagan, a white special education teacher. I had an African-American one for the first grade and second grade. I was in the third grade special ed. She said, you know what? You're gifted enough to be mainstream. And she fought with the principal, and she fought with the school, and she fought, and she got me out and set me on a trajectory that ended me up here. I remember that. I remember that was a big deal because my class, 1970, was the first integrated class in Coshada. That was police when we went to school initially for the very first time. Everything was through race, was around black and white racial issues. This white teacher fought for me. I remember that. I remember Mr. Bordelon in high school, this thin, tall guy who spoke German as well as I speak English, actually better than I speak English. And I was a mess in the 9th and 10th grade, and I was just a mess and just got into trouble. But he would pull me aside and talk to me and put me back in class and give me extra assignments and hold me over after school, speak into my life, tell me what he saw. He just kept speaking, kept working with me, kept speaking, kept working with me. And he's responsible for the huge turnaround. He's one of the folk responsible for the huge turnaround that got me graduating and going to college. It was this tall, thin white man. I remember Mr. Raritan in college, who was the head of the philosophy department, and said, you know what, you have a mind for philosophy. You ought to be a philosophy major. He pursued me an entire year. Finally, I changed my major, and I didn't even know I was called to preach, but I didn't know that would set the foundation for me to go to seminary and study theology. So I said to this man, I said, I just remember that not all white people are bad. Not all black people are good. And I remember the folk that God raised to help redeem my life. And he said, you know what? I got it, Pastor. And then he told me a story about this how he played basketball and he lived in this poor neighborhood. His parents were divorced. And this Italian couple essentially adopted him with no explanation. One day his team won the championship. The school couldn't afford to buy a trophy, and he won most valuable player. These parents, Italian parents, they bought him a trophy and said, "You deserve to have it." He remembered how when people would bring him home, he lived in this horrible project area, and they would stop 3 blocks away and he had to walk. But not this Italian family. They drove a red Cadillac, he said, and every day, every time they bring him home, they would drive straight and put him off right in front of his house. That's why 1 John 4 says that he talks about perfect love that expels this notion of fear. He's really talking about is loving relationships. You can substitute that with loving relationship because that expels all fear. And if we are afraid, it's because we're afraid of punishment, something bad happening to us. And this shows that we haven't really been gripped by the love of a healthy relationship. That's really what the text is suggesting, right? But relationship in place will cause us to take risk. This white couple risked for this black boy. And he said when he got to college, the mom just kept sending him money every month, just like he was her own child. Finally, he said, enough. He said, "I can't repay you. Why are you doing this?" And she said, "I don't want you to repay me. I want you to pay it forward. Do what I'm doing for you for somebody else, and don't let race be the difference." And then here's what I said to him. I said, "Okay, I want you to take the white police officer shooting your second cousin, put it here. Then I want you to take this white Italian family who poured into your life for 9 years and put them right beside. And expand your perspective. And remember." Everybody shout, relationships. It makes all the difference.